Global aviation today resembles a giant mechanism operating at the very edge of its capabilities, where the slightest disruption in resource supply threatens an immediate shutdown. We have grown accustomed to affordable flights, but the bitter reality is this: modern airliners are the most vulnerable hostages of geopolitical games and energy shortages. Can civil aviation survive an era of cheap oil's decline if the planet's key artery, the Strait of Hormuz, becomes blocked and jet fuel prices soar to unreachable heights? In this video, we will analyze the current crisis and break down in detail the short-term and long-term consequences of fuel scarcity. We will turn to history's lessons and uncover why today's turmoil in the Middle East might not just temporarily paralyze the skies, but could forever change the very philosophy of travel. Imagine a narrow strip of water between Oman and Iran, just 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. You could drive that distance in half an hour, yet this is where the energy heart of our civilization beats. Welcome to the Strait of Hormuz, the planet's main fuel tap. Through this thin straw, approximately 20% of the world's oil passes daily. If you've ever wondered why any spark of political conflict in the Middle East instantly echoes in airports across London, Tokyo, or Oslo, the answer lies right here. Let's make a simple comparison. The Strait of Hormuz is to the global economy what a single power cable is to a vast metropolis. If you squeeze it, the city doesn't just go dark, it stops. In this metaphor, aviation is the most sensitive electronic device. Why? Because aircraft, unlike cars or trains, have no plan B. They need jet fuel in massive quantities and at a predictable price. But what happens when predictability vanishes? We recently received a frightening answer in the form of the SAS case. The Scandinavian airline, Scandinavian Airlines, a pillar of European transport, was forced to drastically cut its flight schedule. The reason is simple and fatal. Fuel prices skyrocketed so high that every takeoff began incurring losses. In Norway alone, 118 flights were canceled. Imagine thousands of people in Oslo, Stockholm, and Copenhagen staring at departure boards, all seeing the same red word: canceled.
You might ask, what's the connection between heightened tensions in the Persian Gulf and a domestic flight in Norway? The connection is direct and ruthless. Modern aviation operates on a razor-thin profit margin. Fuel makes up 30 to 40% of an airline's total costs. If the oil price jumps due to the threat of a Strait of Hormuz closure, the entire business model collapses like a house of cards. What we are witnessing now in Scandinavia is not just a temporary difficulty, it is a symptom of systemic paralysis. The stakes are rising by the hour. If today SAS is cancelling 100 flights, what will happen tomorrow if the energy tap is turned off completely? We are beginning our investigation to understand, is the collapse of SAS an accident, or is it the first domino in a chain reaction that will permanently close the skies we once took for granted? You might ask, can't they just raise ticket prices? That's precisely the trap. If SAS were to hike prices instantly, passengers would simply stop buying tickets. But the flights are already scheduled. Tickets have been sold at the old prices, and the fuel tanks need to be filled at the new astronomical rates. The stakes are rising with every minute. The airline finds itself in a situation where not flying is cheaper than flying. This is operational paralysis. An industry that has spent decades building the most complex logistical chains is crumbling due to a single factor: the cost of energy. But before we dive into the numbers, we must ask ourselves the main question: just how deep does this rabbit hole go, and what other traps does the history of oil wars have in store for us? The answer will make you look at the ordinary flight ticket on your smartphone in a completely new way.
Have you ever wondered how much net profit an airline makes from your ticket on a medium-haul flight? You might be surprised, but after paying all the fees, crew salaries, and aircraft maintenance, the carrier is often left with an amount equivalent to the price of a cup of coffee at the airport terminal. Aviation is a business with phenomenally low margins, a giant with feet of clay that only feels stable in calm weather. But when an energy storm brews on the horizon, those feet begin to crumble. Let's break this down. Imagine you own a small restaurant. You sold tickets for a special dinner a month in advance at $50 per guest. Then, the day before the event, the cost of ingredients suddenly quintuples. You have two choices: either cancel the dinner and refund the money, suffering huge reputational damage, or go through with it and be ruined by the cost of supplies. This is the exact trap awaiting the entire global aviation industry if the Strait of Hormuz is blocked. Problem number 2 is the total economic degradation of the industry. Fuel is the main variable in the equation of flight. When oil prices break records due to geopolitical shocks, airlines switch to survival mode. But the stakes are rising. The first segment to die is the low-cost carriers. Do you remember the times when you could fly from one European capital to another for 20 euros? Forget it. The energy crisis is turning aviation from mass transportation back into an elite privilege, much like it was in the 1950s. Now imagine the domino effect. Aviation isn't just about moving people from point A to point B. It is the backbone of the global economy. If tickets become golden and flights become rare, a chain reaction begins. Tourist-dependent countries like Turkey, Egypt, or Thailand, whose budgets rely 20 to 30% on air traffic, plunge into a deep depression. Hotels empty out, airports turn into ghostly monuments to former greatness, and the global supply chains for electronics and pharmaceuticals, often transported in the cargo holds of passenger planes, simply shatter.
You might ask, can't they just wait it out for a couple of months until the situation in the strait calms down? The answer is frightening: no. Airlines have enormous fixed costs. Aircraft leases must be paid monthly, even if the planes are grounded. 2 to 3 weeks of downtime due to a fuel shock could knock out even giants like Lufthansa or Emirates. It's very likely that we are on the verge of a great extinction of air carriers. But wait, I haven't told you the scariest part yet. All these economic calculations only make sense as long as the fuel physically exists. What if a moment comes when even with a bag of gold, you simply cannot fill the tank? The real nightmare begins when we realize that it's not just about money. We are used to complaining about sky-high prices and expensive tickets, but what if I told you that in a real global crisis, the price suddenly stops mattering? The real twist is that aviation could perish not from the high cost of kerosene, but from its physical absence. Imagine a modern airport as a giant living organism. It doesn't store reserves of fat for months ahead. All of the world's logistics today are built on the ruthless just-in-time principle. Fuel is delivered by tankers and pipelines in exactly the volume needed for current departures. Most of the world's largest aviation hubs have actual kerosene reserves in storage that would last for a maximum of 5 to 10 days. This is comparable to your smartphone. If you yank the charger out of the wall socket, it doesn't matter how many millions are in your bank account, the screen will still go dark in a few hours. When the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, the charger for global aviation simply vanishes. Even if companies like SAS or Emirates offer any amount of money for refueling, they will only be met with the hollow echo of empty tanks.
To understand why the closure of the Strait of Hormuz could become a point of no return for aviation, we need to come down from the clouds and back to Earth, into the realm of hard physics and a history we'd prefer to forget. Why is aviation so painfully sensitive to energy shocks, while cars are slowly but surely transitioning to electricity? The answer lies in one phrase: the energy density trap. Imagine a chocolate bar. It contains a huge number of calories with minimal weight. Now imagine a bucket of salad. To get the same amount of energy, you'd have to eat the whole thing. Kerosene is the chocolate for engines. It has a unique combination of lightness and colossal energy power. To replace one tank of kerosene with modern lithium batteries, a plane would have to carry a battery pack weighing 40 to 50 times more than the fuel itself. Do you grasp the scale of the disaster? If we take away kerosene, the plane simply wouldn't be able to lift off the ground under the weight of its own batteries. Aviation is the only mode of transport that physically cannot quickly escape its oil dependence. We are literally chained to the oil derrick by an invisible chain of physical laws. But haven't we been through this before? Let's look into history's black box. October 1973, the OPEC oil embargo. Oil prices quadrupled in just a few months. What happened to aviation? It was a moment of truth. That was when the agony of the legendary Pan Am began, an airline that was a symbol of America but couldn't stomach the new fuel prices. The 1979 crisis merely finished off those who survived the first round. History teaches us an energy crisis doesn't just make tickets more expensive, it changes the very structure of the skies. Weak players disappear, and the survivors are forced to turn flying into a luxury. Now, let's return to the present day. Why is the Strait of Hormuz a switch that could turn off the lights for the entire industry? The fact is, modern aviation is built on the principles of the global division of labor. The fuel pumped into the tanks of SAS in Oslo could have been refined in Rotterdam from oil that passed through that very strait. As soon as this flow is interrupted, it's not just a shortage that begins, it's chaos. You might ask, what about sustainable fuel or hydrogen, which we hear so much about in the news? This is where the stakes become truly high. Today, SAF is produced in negligible quantities and costs 3 to 5 times more than conventional jet fuel. To use it on a mass scale right now would mean a ticket from London to New York equivalent in price to a used car. We find ourselves in a technological dead end. The old world of cheap oil is crumbling, but the new world of green energy is not yet capable of lifting us off the ground. And now it's time to reveal the main truth of our investigation. Aviation is the canary in the coal mine of modern civilization. When the oxygen runs out in a mine, the small bird is the first to die, signaling danger to everyone else. When cheap energy runs out in the global economy, aviation is the first to fall. And the case of SAS is not just a local Scandinavian failure, it is a loud, desperate cry from the model of the world we have grown accustomed to. Let's honestly answer the question, what did the era of cheap jet fuel truly give us? It gave us the illusion that distance no longer exists. We got used to thinking the world is small, that breakfast in Paris and dinner in New York is normal. But the insight is that the world is actually vast, and its smallness was merely a subsidy from the oil fields of the Middle East. As soon as the Strait of Hormuz closes, the space between continents begins to expand rapidly, transforming from a manageable 6-hour flight into an insurmountable abyss.
Think about it. Aviation is the glue that holds the fragments of the globalized world together. Without it, not only tourist routes fall apart, but also families, international scientific projects, and high-tech manufacturing. The SARS crisis exposes a frightening truth. Our freedom of movement hangs by the thinnest thread of geopolitical stability. If that thread finally snaps, we will wake up in a world where the horizon once again becomes a physical boundary, not just a picture outside the window. What will the sky of tomorrow look like? If the energy standoff in the Strait of Hormuz becomes permanent, a great rollback awaits us. Imagine aviation taking a leap into the past. Flights would once again become a rare, almost ceremonial event, accessible only to a privileged few. Ticket prices could surge by 5 to 10 times, turning today's low-cost carriers into museum pieces. Yes, engineers will offer us sustainable fuels or hydrogen engines, but today that feels like trying to replace cheap tap water with premium champagne. We face a world of high-speed trains within continents and empty transatlantic flight paths.
In conclusion, it becomes clear modern aviation is the most fragile thread holding our world together. We have seen how the slightest tremor in the Strait of Hormuz can cause a heart attack for entire airlines, turning scheduled flights into empty lines on departure boards. The shadow of the energy crisis falls upon every airport on the planet, forcing us to rethink our accustomed freedom of movement. It's important to emphasize, in this video, we have deliberately analyzed the most radical and negative scenario. Of course, the complete disappearance of civilian air travel seems unlikely today. Humanity values its mobility too highly, and the mechanisms of the global economy are extremely resilient. However, history teaches us that the impossible happens far more often than we'd like to believe. Will we be able to adapt to a new reality, or will we witness the decline of a great era of accessible flight? The answer to this question is being written right now. If you want to keep your finger on the pulse of aviation, understand how modern airliners work, and learn what other dangers the industry faces, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. There, dozens of fascinating videos await you about the secrets of civil aviation and the future of global transport. Be sure to check out our other videos to always stay informed. See you in the skies.